Hello and welcome to Down and Dirty with Darci. I'm your host, Darci Smith, also known as Career Coach Darci. We are here to get down and dirty about careers, uncovering salaries, wild stories, backgrounds, and more from guests with some of the most eccentric professions each week. This podcast is presented by Onomy. Welcome back to Down and Dirty with Darci. I am Darci, obviously, and today I have Sam with me to chat a little bit. So sorry to everyone who's obsessed with Rami, but she is not here today. We have Sam instead, which it's okay. But Sam is also a producer of the show. He's in the background a little bit for us and the co-founder of Onomy. So we're gonna chat with him a little bit about some career stuff too. So welcome to the intro.
To be here. Thank you. I'm not Rami. Rami is much cooler, more enjoyable, and has much better facial reactions than I do. For those of you who watch the video version of this, but I'll do my best to emulate her woos. Woo! Thanks for having me.
There you go.
I'm glad to be here.
Glad to be here. Tell the people a little bit how long have you had Onomy and when did you start it?
Onomy's been around. I think there are actually kind of a couple of different ways to answer that, because we did start the company technically like half a year or so before we launched anything, but I would say we went through a bunch of testing and content generation. I would say the current version of Onomy's been around for like a year or so, and all the content that we have is that's in the library right now is much more like the last 6 months. So everything that you see, creator-led educational content. We have mini courses. Darci's got one of them. It's about workplace confidence. It's phenomenal. Check that out. But beyond that, we have podcasts just like this one. And we've got other awesome web series that we're creating. It's all educational. It's all creator-led from some of the biggest content creators on social media. And personal finance, career, and personal development are our main categories. So it's all free.
Hell yeah. I was going to say, you're missing the most important part, which is, it's completely free. I love it. I wanted to ask you some stuff just about career-wise, because being a co-founder, you've obviously hired for your business. And I just love to get the perspective of someone that's in the position. And that's how I get most of my advice and information from is actually interviewing people that are hiring managers. So I have a few things for you. But one, people have been asking me a ton of stuff about LinkedIn lately, optimizing their profile and this and that. So when you see a resume come through, do you like to click on the link to their LinkedIn and make it easy on yourself to just see a quick snapshot on LinkedIn? Do you do that?
I do a lot of the time. I mean, I wouldn't say it's an every time thing for me, but LinkedIn typically has different info than does a resume. And I think it's a really good way to get a full understanding of a person's background. Not everyone's LinkedIn is up to date, but one of the other things I like to look for too is whether there are any mutual connections, or I can get more of an idea of what else they're not talking about on their resume that might be on a LinkedIn profile, for example, or see if there are other ways that we might be similar. I screen the resume first every time. So if I like the resume in some way, I'll typically look at LinkedIn as a next step. But if I don't like the resume, I'll just pass and move on to the next one.
How do you, this is a fun one. How many seconds would you say that you spend looking at a resume when it comes in through an application?
Oh yeah, not very many. I honestly think I want to say 10, but when I really think about it, I think it's less than that, because I feel think about from the hiring manager's perspective, if you're not someone who is combed through resumes, I'm sure you'll quickly understand why this is the case. Because think about getting hundreds and hundreds of applicants for something on top of everything else that you're doing on your day-to-day. Trying to find the right candidates is hard, and it's really time consuming. So I think that from a hiring manager's perspective, you have a few things that you're specifically looking for. For me, it's typically a resume that's easy to comprehend, quantifiable results, numbers, percentages, revenue numbers, all sorts of things like that really can pop off of a page. And then a few keywords or certain types of experience that you're looking for, right? So say you're looking for someone who's had you're looking for someone who's a marketing manager or something like that. You want to make sure that their background really aligns up with that as much as possible. And then you have the job description that you're trying to match with the resume. So in your head, you can like put these things together really easily and get a good feel for if you're seeing what you want. It's definitely easy to miss good candidates by doing it that way, but I think that most people probably do have a similar approach to that. And I think the takeaway for anyone who's applying to jobs is to make your resume as skimmable as possible for the hiring manager. So make those things that you would view as really important to this job from your background really pop off the page, so that when someone's spending just a few seconds looking at it for a first glance, that those things are standing out. Once you like it, you read it more, you get more in depth on the bullets and stuff, but that's a starting point.
Right. I always say you want the hiring team to either want to interview you or want to read more. Either way, that's doing its job. And for me, I'm like, make it so freaking obvious, like literally bold, like copy up pieces of it and bold it out. So when someone's skimming, it literally like pops off the page of like, I saw you were looking for someone that's done this. Here, this is in bold for you.
Yeah, totally.
Like aid to people's laziness. Like, and then like, that's the easiest way to make sure you get noticed. I wonder if you, what your thoughts are. I think you're a one-pager, right? Like you prefer a one-page resume?
I'm a one-pager. We've talked about this before. Big time one-page guy over here.
Yeah. And then do you like when people have like a summary on top or like some sort of like, or you should like jump right into the experience? That's perfectly fine, right?
I think a summary is, so resumes are valuable real estate, right? Especially if you're trying to keep it as short as possible. If it goes over to a second page, fine, right? If you have a lot of experience, that's relevant. If you have 15 years of experience, I personally don't always think it's necessary to include every single thing that you've done, just like include what's relevant and what might be of interest. But I think that like because the real estate is so valuable, to have a summary on there that's like this big, that can be like 15% of a page. So I think it's kind of a waste of space. I think that if you're good at making it skimmable, as I had described, you can accomplish what you would accomplish in a resume in a summary and the rest of the resume.
Yeah, definitely. And last thing I'll say on this is like, what I love to see is a highlight section, which again is more of that, like you're pulling out just like 3 bullet points from your resume that are directly related to the job. And you're just putting those 3 things on top. So then it's like the hiring team doesn't even have to really read the whole, they could read those 3 bullet points and be like, oh yeah, that person's a fit. We should interview them and just see what else, like it seems like so easy. But I think the overall sentiment here is like tailoring your resume, as annoying as that is, to every job, which is, again, it sounds terrible, but it takes like what, 5 minutes or so, like just do it. But yeah, no, it's so nice to get it's really cool to get your perspective. When you, you've had a normal corporate job, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've had a few.
Yeah.
I've had a few.
I've
had maybe 4 or 5.
Okay. And then you were like, I'm going to do this on my own. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally makes sense.
And I hired people in those roles too. It's like, hiring managers across the board probably have similar approaches. And that's like, it's, especially if you're working at a really big company or like one that's well known, the number of applicants like that you get within a matter of days is astronomical, right? Like 500 sometimes for certain jobs, so much that you have to like turn it off. So make it easy for the hiring manager to want to take that next step with you without having to think much about it.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Another reason I really wanted to talk to you today is because you are like the perfect person to chat with because of our guest. So the person that we interviewed is actually a doula. And she chats about being a birthing doula, being a death doula. And if you have no idea what that is, because I asked my boyfriend and he was like, I've never heard that term in my life. And then I explained to him, like, it's a doula, they help with birth. He goes, oh, well, like, isn't that a midwife? And then I was like, oh my God, I don't know the difference either. So then like, we're trying to figure it out. And so we learned so much from her, but then I found out you used a doula, right?
Oh yeah. I used a doula, a birth doula, not a death doula. So first of all, Ryan, I'm not surprised that he is, before my wife was pregnant, I didn't know what a doula was. I think I knew medulla oblongata from The Waterboy, and that's probably as close as it gets. Those are not related at all, but when I think doula.
Dad jokes.
Anyway, dad jokes. So Ryan, first of all, shout out Ryan. If you haven't listened to the episode with Ryan, from a few weeks back. Go check it out. It's awesome. It's really interesting. He has like a top 10 most dangerous job in the world. So Ryan's awesome. Shout out Ryan. But anyway, I think like it's probably the case for a lot of people, whether, you know, no matter what situation you're in, a lot of people I don't think really have a good understanding of what a doula is or how they can be helpful to you throughout various processes that you're in your life, birthing, death, whatever it might be. So we did have one for the birth of my son, which was probably the greatest decision we've ever made, I think, in anything. But Sabia, who's coming on, is incredible, and you'll get to know everything that she's all about. I don't know how much detail you want me to get into about my doula experience, Darci, but
I mean, maybe just share like one of the like most important things that you think it helped you with, because I'm curious if for you it was the part of it when your wife was pregnant, or it was the after having the baby, that like, where did you find, I'm sure throughout the whole process, obviously, but like for you specifically, where you were like, damn, this was worth getting a doula, and like, I would always recommend it. Cause I feel like as soon as you heard we were having a doula on, you're like, this is like, everyone needs to know like who these people are, because they're like amazing. Yes,
I was so excited because pretty much what you just described is exactly how I feel. Like it was incredible. I think a lot of people, so you'll find out what a doula is, but I think from a high level definition, from my perspective, is that a doula is someone who helps the mother and, you know, the significant other or the co-parent or whoever it is in this process through the birthing process, from before going into labor all the way through to postpartum and things like that. So there's a lot that happens during that time period. Some people start really early with them. Like when you first find out you're pregnant, some people are like, okay, I'm later and I realize I want a doula. For my wife and I, we realized we wanted one later on. And I think we basically agreed to bring one on like 2 weeks before my wife ended up giving birth, because my wife gave birth at 32 weeks, which is 2 months earlier than the full gestational period, which is like a full-term pregnancy. So since our son came 8 weeks early, it was a whole unexpected situation. We didn't know, like, it was scary because, you know, that's not supposed to happen, quote unquote, even though it's very common. So to have the doula there for that entire process was like literally a godsend. She was there to ease everything for us in like these really anxious and emotional times, telling us everything's going to be fine. You know, when a lot of the time the doctors that you're dealing with, there are like dozens of doctors and nurses coming in and out of the labor and delivery room throughout the process. And a lot of the time you really just don't know what's going on because there's so much movement. And so to have the doula there, who's sort of like a liaison between you and the medical staff, is really, really helpful. A lot of the time, ours was named Lauren. I'd just be like, Lauren, what's going on? Or like when we found out that my wife was going into labor, I called her up and I was like, Charlotte's going into labor. Like, it's really early. Like, we don't know it. Like, can you tell us like what we should do? So we didn't know where to go in the hospital. She told us where to go. As we were in the room, we were like texting her updates about everything. She's like, I'll come at this point in the process. And all of a sudden everything happened so quick. She's like, I'm on my way. She gets there. I'm freaking out. She's not there yet. There are like dozens of doctors. And finally she walks in and I'm like, thank you. And then throughout the entire process, it was like so stressful and crazy. And throughout the entire process, she was just like, kind of like shepherding us through it and just like connecting with us on an emotional level that made everything feel so much more comfortable and okay than we would have felt if she wasn't there. So it was, I thought like she was like a savior for both of us and just made everything so much more seamless and smooth. And I think we hear Sabia talk about how she has to have like an emotional and intimate connection with everyone that she's working with throughout the process. And when she was talking about that, I like really felt it to my core because that's exactly what we experienced. And I would recommend it 100 times out of 100 to anyone who can afford it and is going through that process.
It's amazing. I mean, after talking with you and after talking with her, if I ever am fortunate enough to have a child, there's no question in my mind. I'm 100% going to do it. And I'm not going to give it up now, but she does share with us her numbers and how much it costs to have a doula. And I think it's very, like, it's actually very affordable. and something that like, and people can do. So let's get into the interview. I'm so excited for you guys to hear, and I'm just so grateful for Sabia for coming on. So let's get into it.
Yeah, she's awesome. Woo!
Welcome to Down and Dirty with Darci. Thank you so much for coming on, Sabia. Can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Let's see. I am a full spectrum doula. I am a CEO. I am an author now. I'm practicing that one. I am an angel investor. I am a dog mom of two. I am a platonic co-parent. And I am pretty happy today.
I love it. I love it. I was so excited to get you on. Like, from my research, I was looking for a doula specifically. And then I came across your page and I was like, holy moly, she does so many things and like is so involved. And I have so many questions. I literally have them written down. But let's just start from the beginning. Like, where are you from? How did you even get into the profession of, and was doula the first thing you did? Like,
No.
was that even like I want to be a doula, or was that like, no? Yeah, give us the background.
So I'm from Jersey originally. And I did not even know what a doula was until I was in my early 20s. I was working as a nursing assistant. I actually wanted to be a like nurse practitioner or a doctor, something around that,
Mm-hmm.
And I was working in hospital spaces, and I learned about doulas when I moved to Philly. And there were like community doulas, like I was actually really heavily into the art scene at that time. And it was like community doulas who were in the space. And so I started hearing the word doula and I'm like, what is that? What is happening?
Yeah.
And so long story less long, after being in the medical field for a while, I fell in love with doula work, but also was like, could I actually do this? So it was like probably about a 1 to 2 year time where I was like kind of in between on could I do this? Do I want to do nursing? Like what do I want to do? And then finally life happened. I moved to Massachusetts and became a prison birth project doula. So I started my work as a volunteer, full spectrum, working with incarcerated folks, formerly incarcerated, people
Wow.
who use drugs, active and in recovery. And yeah, even then, even as a volunteer for those 2 years, I knew that I had found something I was very passionate about, but I didn't necessarily understand that I would be here in the space that I'm in now.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew
Like being
that
an
I
author
loved
and
the work.
yeah.
Yeah, I knew that I loved the work, but even I was still working my regular 9 to 5 in the medical space. I had switched to like the admin side of it. And I don't know, I was still even in school. Like I was like, I'm gonna be a nurse. I'm gonna be like, and then I don't know, I finally like accepted the call.
Yeah.
And
How
now
long has it been?
here I am.
How long
I
has it
started
been?
off as a doula in 2015.
2015. Okay. And now are you, and forgive me because I am just not, I need to know the definition of a doula, number one, because I was talking to this about my boyfriend. He's like, what is that? And I'm like, I'm trying to explain it without really knowing. And then I'm like, but then there's a midwife, but then there's also a death doula that I've heard of. So
Yes,
yeah, like, can you just give us
yes.
some definitions, please?
Yes, that whole world, if you're not in it, can be very confusing. So I want to name
Mm-hmm.
that if people are like, I'm not really sure, it's very confusing. So doulas are non-medical support people. Midwives are medical support, right? So midwives obviously
Okay.
go to school, they get trained, they have all these things and the testing and all that. Doulas do not have that. So we don't have like a certifying body in that way because the work that we do is non-medical. Now, with that being said, I am a full spectrum doula. So that means that I am a person that supports the wide range of reproductive health experiences. So that can be birth, that can be postpartum, that can be abortions, that can be like anything. Like if
And you're
you have something that
supporting, sorry to interrupt, you're
Mhm.
supporting in the sense of like helping them through it mentally, or are you like in
Emotionally,
there? Okay.
yeah, so like emotionally, informationally, right? So for example, the ways that doula support is when you go to a doctor's office, they may only have about 15 minutes to really have an appointment with you, and you leave with a whole bunch of questions, right? And you're like, well, who's going to answer these questions? Your doula will.
Got
So
it. Oh,
I'm
I
coming
love
to your
that.
house
Mm.
and I'm sitting with you for 2 or 3 hours, and we're having a conversation about your birth plan or what does it look like when you're postpartum. Let's build resources around that. Let's talk about your family support. What does that look like? What does your relationship to your partner, or your partners look like, right? Like, what is a trauma that is coming up for you in this process of what you're going through? What resources do you need? Because maybe you're having food insecurity or you need more financial support. Can I go find a crib for you? Right. So it can be many, many things. And so there's like that full spectrum of support. And that does include death work. So right now my focus heavily is death work.
Really?
But yeah, for sure.
Just learned about this, so I'm so fascinated.
Yeah, for sure. And I also support all people, right? So it can be women, men, cis women, trans folks, queer folks, people who identify however, any person I'm down for. So full spectrum work, full spectrum doula work is the base of non-medical support, but I would say full spectrum doula work specifically, it brings in that political aspect, if you will, about like inclusion and resource and supporting communities that don't have it. And yeah, that's the world I found myself in.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I feel like I wouldn't have even known that the education is out there to be able to ask other people other than my doctor when I'm pregnant or whatever, right? Like I just wouldn't have known. And I've heard the word doula, but I truly like, and honestly, it's because one of my friends is really wanting to be one. So I hope she gets like inspired by this podcast.
Yes, tell her to come train with us. Tell her to come train with me. So she'll get into a lot of things. And also I would say too, like a lot of people, the one thing that's really beneficial about doulas is that we also are very accessible. So for example, if you needed to ask your nurse, your doctor a question, you have to call and you gotta wait for them to call back. And sometimes it's not even like that serious of a question. Like it's different to be like, hey, I have like a medical emergency going on. But sometimes it's just like, is it normal or what should I do? Or I have a question about my birth plan or the hospital choices. You just call us. You just have our number. Just give us a call. Yeah, like, and you just text us. And like, a lot of times when our clients go into labor, they call us, like sending us pictures, like, here's my mucus plug. And we're like, okay, this is great. Like,
I love that.
Yeah, they're like, can you come over and look at these parts of mine? Is it okay? Like, so it's also a person who's like experienced and seeing these like events in life happen and being able to tell you like, oh, this is a normal experience, or like what you're doing is okay, or the feelings that you're feeling is okay, versus where you feel like, what am I doing? I'm so lost.
Right. So you have a company. You're not just a doula. You are a doula, obviously a full spectrum doula, but you have a company where you train people and they are going out and providing these services, right?
Yes. So I have a couple
of
companies.
Name of it?
Yeah. So I have a couple things. I have my nonprofit, which is in San Diego. We serve about 200 families a year with doula services. And we've trained 80 doulas in that space, different languages, different cultural backgrounds, so on and so forth. And then I also have another company called Advocacy Doula Trainings, where we train doulas. We've like trained over 6,000 doulas all over the world around full spectrum doula work.
Amazing. So cool. And where are you based out of right now?
Atlanta.
Okay. That's what I thought.
I also move all around, like complete Sagittarius. Like I want to go.
I'm a Sagittarius too. Yeah. I'm the same way. When's your birthday?
Yeah. November 25th.
Mine's the 23rd. Weird. I thought you were going to say, I was like, oh my gosh. My friends are like, how do you move all the time? I'm like, I cannot stay in one place. And I even talked to my therapist about it. I was like, is this a problem? Like, should we unpack this? And she was like, it seems just like what you like. So I think that's fine. I was like, cool.
I think it's fine. I think it's hard sometimes for other people to grasp it. And I think that's what made me question if it was okay. Because other people were like, I've lived in this space since I was a kid. And I'm like, but why?
Yeah. Weird.
Like when I moved to San Diego, I went there to visit when I first became a doula. I went there to visit and I was like, I'm here. And I moved there in like 2 years. I was like, it's time to go.
I love it. Oh my gosh. And you mentioned earlier that you have a child, one child?
So I co-parent 2 kids with my friend. And my friend is actually, I was her backup doula 5 years ago. Oh my gosh. She had a primary doula. I met her as her backup doula just in case they needed extra support. Yeah. And then we just grew in our relationship, and now we co-parent 2 kids together platonically.
That's amazing. And where are the kids? Are they in Atlanta?
They just moved here. They moved here because they were living in San Diego. She actually runs, her name is Venice. She runs my nonprofit, and our kids' names is Jacob and Elijah. And so I moved out here a couple of years ago, 2020, actually, right before the pandemic happened. And so it was like I moved to Atlanta and then everything got shut
Couldn't do
down.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah. So even though I've been here for like 3 years, I'm like, have I been here for 3 years?
Yeah.
But she just moved from San Diego to 10 minutes away from me, literally like less than 2 months ago.
Oh, that's so nice. And now you're
Yeah.
like, well, I might move again. Sorry.
Now I'm like, I'll stay in Georgia, but I will do other things. Like I just rented an apartment in Costa Rica for 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll be going like back and forth between
So
San Jose,
fun.
Costa Rica, and Atlanta,
Oh,
and everywhere else that I'm traveling.
love. Okay, so I'm I'm all about salary transparency on this podcast, and I would love to know, can you share like some of your numbers? Like just because owning your own businesses is already tough, and then being a female, another one, right? Being a Black female, another one. So and queer. Let's just keep going. So yeah, let's get into it. Share with
Yes.
us, yeah, what you're open to share with us. Because yeah, I
Yeah.
would love to know.
So I love talking about money because I think that's like one of the things that is often missing from conversation, especially is missing in a conversation of like in the process. And I've always shared my number transparently while I'm in the process, not like, oh, it's I've been in the game for 20 years and let me tell you now what was happening then. It's like I'm
Yeah.
gonna tell you just now like what's happening.
Mhm.
So I quit. So I became a doula in 2015. I was doing work voluntarily. And 2018 is when I actually quit my job. And I'm gonna tell you, when I quit my job, I had maybe like $1,000,
Oh my gosh.
maybe, and I was living in
Wow.
San Diego. But honestly, it felt like I had to choose myself, even with the risk involved. Because as you said, with all the identities that I carry, being in corporate America was like, not fun.
Mm-mm.
So the first year in 2018, I was broke. Um,
You're like, I'm fine going into debt. Like I knew what I needed to do and I knew that could happen.
it was
Yep.
like I knew, and it was like I didn't know what could happen, but I knew I had to figure it out.
Right.
And that's like how I felt. I was like, I don't know where this will go, but I know that if I don't take this chance to figure it out, I'm never going to feel satisfied. Like, even if I failed, at least I failed and I knew that I tried and like
Yeah.
really fully tried, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, first 2018, which is my doula practice by myself in San Diego, I made $25,000 that year.
Wow. I mean, hey, that's great. My first year was 20,000. So I'm
Yeah.
with you. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like 25,000, maybe I had roommates, like it wasn't like nothing I could
No,
do
you
was like
can't
by myself.
live. Yeah, you can't live in San Diego on $25,000. No way.
What?
Yeah,
Like
no
me
way.
and my ex-girlfriend were like sharing a room. We had a 3 bedroom. We stayed in a 3 bedroom apartment. My best friend had one room. Our other roommate was in the other room. We were in the smallest room, and that room was like $500 and we split it in half. So
Nice.
it was so my $25,000, like it went somewhere, but I was broke, like period.
Mm,
The next year I opened up my nonprofit. I was still doing my, direct care doula work. I also raised my prices like from charging like $600 per doula service to like $2,000 per doula service. Plus I had like other income coming in from opening BADT specifically. So I ended that year at $100,000. And I was
nice.
like,
That's
oh,
amazing. Okay, I can do this.
I was like, but I
Yeah.
think for me, the biggest thing that I learned in that $100,000 year was even at that point, I had actually started to invest, like I had like a virtual assistant because it was like for me, in order to grow, I needed to have assistants. So as soon as I was able to like, and that virtual assistants, I think the first one I got was like maybe like $10 an hour, right? And she
Right.
was just doing like little things, but those little things were like so helpful to me to expand other things and other thoughts and other like creations that I needed to make. So that was that year. 2020, pandemic started. BADT was very much built off of virtual, like that whole virtual thing prior to the pandemic. So
Sorry,
like whenever,
that's your nonprofit that you're
so
BADT?
BADT is my for-profit doula training
Okay.
organization.
Okay.
So I had set it up in 2019 as a virtual space for accessibility already. So then when 2020 happened and everything was closed down, right? Everyone was turning over to virtual and I was already there, right? So I say that all to say that in 2020, we went from 100 to 450,000 for the year.
Oh my God. That is the coolest story ever. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I was like,
You're like, who am I?
okay.
What's happening? Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, okay. And so in that year as well, I really started to do a lot of understanding of money because in my family, no one had ever had that kind of money.
Mm-hmm.
I knew about having a savings account, but I didn't know like what do you do outside of that, right?
Right.
So that was like the year that I opened up my 401k and started to think about, all the things, right?
Investing and saving.
And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and like I got a financial advisor and like all that kind of stuff happened.
Yes.
And then 2021, um, continued on that journey, was really talking transparently to with my audience around like my own journey around money. Um, in 2021, we ended at like 650, something like that.
Yes.
And also that year, I started like angel investing. I also became an intern to my financial firm that I'm a client of.
Oh, cool. That's amazing.
And they were like, it was like a bunch of college students. I was like, I don't care. I want to
I
learn.
want to learn. Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
it's like, I want to learn. I would be right here with a 20-year-old college student at 30 something years old and being a
Mm-hmm.
client of this space because I just want to learn. Like, what are people doing with money? How is it moving? What's going on? What do I need to learn? That kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And then 2022, which is last year, we ended around 650 again. So we're like, okay, we're keeping it steady. And then
Mm-hmm.
also last year, I did a internship around venture capital because I was like,
Yes.
what's happening?
Let's learn. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, and this year we're on task to do the same or more. So
Amazing. And how many team members do you have now?
let's see. BADT has three core admin people. Of course, they have like little contractors and folks that like help us, but we have three core folks. I myself, so I have my companies are set up as the Black Doula, which is a S corp. And then BADT is a branch, like a DBA of the Black Doula, because they're both S corps.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so myself I'm managed by two people. So I have two assistants, Davina and Jocelyn. And then my nonprofit currently has two folks. Venice runs it, and she also has an assistant. And then I also have another company that I'm building right now, which is Loads of Pride, which is a trucking company. And so that currently has about a couple people.
Did you just say a trucking company?
Yes.
She does it all. She does it all.
Yeah.
What type of like shipping and like
So what we're working on, our two avenues that we're working on is like, long distance, like trucking, but also like we are focused on community kind of like work. So helping small companies with their needs, like working with like, small food suppliers, things like that to help them to build their company,
mhm.
by providing them with like transportation at like a equitable and accessible cost. So
Amazing. That's so cool. And okay, we have to talk about your book because I know
yes.
you're not saying author as strongly as I'd like you to say, but you're an author. You're a fucking author. So tell us about the book.
Yes, so this is my book, Birth and Liberation, but I have a closer one here.
Oh,
Birth and
perfect.
Liberation, How Reproductive Justice Can Set Us Free. And that was a process too, like getting a book deal and stuff. That was weird.
Oof. Yeah.
Speaking about money and stuff, I was like, you want to pay me to write a book?
Yeah. That
Okay.
advancement, baby.
Yeah, I was like, really? Okay.
Yeah.
But yes, my book is a reflection of reproductive justice, is a reflection of all the like work and the people that have touched. And there's conversations in here about disparities that are happening in reproductive health, specifically for Black folks. And I also mentioned it heavily Indigenous folks, so they're very much in line with the disparities. And then it also talks about trauma and it talks about what we need to do for that and like how do we get to this at this point of collective liberation and also how do we take away this part of like a lot of times when we talk about reproductive health, men are like, that's not my business, or like or like people who aren't pregnant, right, or have no plans of being pregnant or aren't pregnant at the time, they're like, not my business, right? And it's like, no, actually, this is everyone's business, and this book helps you to understand like how birth is so foundational to all that we do. right? And how it connects to everything that we do. And that if we all made it our responsibility, how much better the world would be collectively. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm like, and you can get this book everywhere, right? Like
everywhere.
Amazon, and it's out and ready to go.
Thanks
So
to that book deal.
yeah.
I like look up my book. I'm like, Berkeley, I'm like, it's here. It's here. So
That's
that's
me.
like,
That's
that's the
amazing.
thing I think that like
How
also
long
comes
did it?
with.
Oh, sorry. I
Um,
have to know how long it took you to write because I wrote a chapter of a book and holy moly, it was so hard. I have a book out that's like a collection, you know, so it's like a bunch of us contributed to it, and just doing that chapter was so difficult. So yeah, how long did it take you to write?
yes, from start to finish, I started in 2020. And that, when I say start to finish, I mean like building a proposal. That took
Right.
months.
Mm-hmm.
Getting the deal, writing out the book. Like my book is like 60,000 something words, I think.
Mm.
It's like a 200-page book. So it took me about 2.5 years or so,
Wow.
two
Yeah.
years from start to
Mm-hmm.
finish. Yeah, I would say like 2 years from start, because you know it's all then it's like the publisher, like where we do this and the edits and the this and the that. Like
Yeah.
it's like that edit process
Mm-mm.
painful. And luckily
Mm-hmm.
my assistant Davina was like helping me with it because it's like you're literally going line for line, like through two what? It's painful, but it's also been really nice to see the process. Like you remember when it was a thought and then you have this tangible thing of like, oh, here's the book that I wrote. And I remember when it was just like a mere little thought in my head.
Right.
So it's been pretty
That's so
wild.
cool. And now you can like hold it and it's like, this is mine. No one can
Yes,
take
and the
that away
thing
from
that's
you.
but the thing that's odd about it is like I'm like, okay, I've been holding it for a while, right? Because you get your pre-orders and releases before everyone else gets it. But now I see pictures of everyone else holding it. And
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
like,
I love
oh,
that.
my precious baby is in your hands,
It's out in the world.
out
I
into
love
the
it.
world.
I love
So
it.
yeah, it's pretty wild. It's about right.
Oh, I love it. Because I'm obsessed with money. I want to know if there's anyone listening that's like interested in becoming a doula or already is, what should they know about pricing their services? Because I wouldn't have any idea of like, because when
Yes, yes.
you talked about 600 versus 2000, and I'm thinking like an hour, right? Like in my mind, I'm like, okay, there's hourly rates, but then like when you guys do something with one person, is that like a flat fee, and how long could that go on for?
Yes.
So yeah, what should they know?
So the one thing that I would say as like the opening to this is like, here's the bad news. Doulas are historically undervalued.
Mm-hmm.
Like historically undervalued. And in the sense of like because we're not medical providers, people sometimes don't understand like what our place is or what the value is to our work. But people that experience doulas are like, oh, you should be paid way more. Because I
Yeah.
called you in the middle of the night, I text you in the middle of the day, you came to my house for 3 hours and sat with me. Like, it's this ongoing connection that I talk to their families. I screen phone, like, it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say that, and I would say like I think a part or a challenge of doing this work is that people don't necessarily understand your value. You're always aiming to explain it to them,
Yeah, which sucks.
right?
Like,
Yeah, which sucks, right? So like
yeah.
there's that part. Um, but I would say the thing that I would say to anyone doing this work is like it's very important to one, understand the environment that you're in. So I actually have a course called the Six Doula Business Essentials that I teach because it's so particular. Like a doula in California is not going to make the same as a doula who lives in Wyoming,
Right.
right? Because the cost of living is different. Like the need is different. If you live in a crowded kind of doula space or somewhere where no one even knows what a doula is, it's going to be different. So your price may range. For me, I went from 600 to 2,000 because I realized that I was undervaluing myself, and the consequence of that was my resentment of doing the work, right? Like I
But
was
can
so
you,
undervalued that I was like, I have way too many clients on my hand.
yeah.
I'm exhausted. I'm barely able to pay my bills, and I'm at burst for 3 days.
Right. But my question is like, what is the 2000 going? Is it a flat fee
Mhm.
of like you pay me
Yes.
$2,000 and I will be there for you throughout this entire birthing process?
hmm
Because that
So
seems weird to me.
2000, oh no, let me tell you. So $2,000, let's say like at the time, $2,000. And again, doulas can range from $5,000, right? They can go to five, like depending on what's going on. But that $2,000 meant that I was doing, at least three prenatals with you. right? Which means I'm coming to your house. We're sitting for several hours. We're talking through all the things, all the options. That also means that I am now accessible to you. When you're not on, like, on call period is when someone is about to have their baby, 37 weeks and forward. But even before that, I'm on call. I'm available to you. So that means that I'm gonna respond to you within a few hours, right? It may not be like call me at 3 o'clock in the morning at that point, right?
Right.
But I'm still available to you. That means I'm sending you resources. I'm checking in with you. I'm making sure that you have the things that you need. I'm here for you when you need to cry. I'm here for you when you need to scream. I'm here for the information and things like that. Then, once you hit 37 weeks, that means I am now on call for you up until you have the baby. Now, the thing about that is you can have the baby at 37 in one day, right? But that you can also have the baby at 42 weeks in one day.
Right.
That's a month difference of time, right? But in that time of me being on call for you, that means that you can call me at any time and I'm going to meet you where you are within a couple hours, if not less.
I'm sorry. I'm floored by this whole situation because in my mind, like the assumption for me would be like, if you literally I just met you and you're like, yeah, I'm a doula. If you want to use a doula like during your pregnancy, it's $10,000. I would nod my head yes. Like that seems normal to me.
Yeah.
Like
And that's exactly what it
I'm
is, right? Because
shook.
you're on call, then you have the birth, right? But again, the on-call times mean that someone can call you. You can be sleeping in your bed, you can be doing things, and you just have to go. It's time for you to go, right? And that comes with, especially if you have children, where your children going to be staying while you go. And the other factor is that you don't know how long you're going to be gone.
Right. Right.
So,
Are people doulas and have other jobs too? Or do they just have a ton of clients and want like, cause you know what I mean? How do you?
so there's some people who are still working full-time jobs and doing doula work, right? And then there's some people who are doing like full-time doula work. And I had did a mix of both. When I first started, I was doing full-time work and doing doula work. So I had maybe like a client a month, maybe 2 clients, depending on what's going on. But when I started working for myself, I had a month where I did 6 births in 1 month. Would not suggest it.
6 births. Oh my
Would
gosh.
not, because it was literally like I would go to sleep for a couple hours and the next person would be in labor, right? Like go to sleep for a day, come back, or I'm have overlapping clients. So I'm going from one hospital to the home. I'm calling in backup doulas to say, hey, can you go here? And I have to pay you from the money that I got too. Right. So that $2,000 made 400 of it may go to a backup doula who's helping me because both of my clients are in labor.
Right. Wow.
So in that process of being at the birth, I mean, I've been at births for 3 days, right? And even if you aren't able to go home in between, you're just on edge. It's not like you're actually getting real sleep and doing,
No,
your
you're just
client's in
waiting for the
labor.
next call. Yeah. Is it like doulas, in my mind, it's like people that have doulas are more so like people that are having their babies outside of the hospital, but that could just be my brain being like, that's the assumption.
Yes. So that's like, so that's a misconception.
Okay.
So
that's what I thought.
many of us can obviously go to like home births and it can be like woo woo and we're all floating and we're all like having
We're in a kiddie pool.
spiritual experience, and it's great. I love home births, right? But a lot of my births, 85%, 90% were in hospitals. So you're dealing with not only the your client is going through their thing, but as you're in that space, you're also navigating the space, right? Like if you have a nurse or a doctor who's really great, wonderful. But a lot of times you're also advocating for your client in that space. You have to be on your P's and Q's. There's been times where I have to watch my client's baby monitor because the nurses aren't being responsive to the decelerations that's happening for the baby's heart. So I'm sitting here posted the whole time. Right? Like
You're
there's times where you're
hello?
running down to the OR with your client because they're having an emergency situation. Their family has to come down and you're rolling right into the OR with them.
Wow.
Right? Like there's a lot of things that can happen in an unexpected. You can even start in a home birth and end up in a hospital. Like who?
Yeah. True. I'm curious, are you allowed, I don't know if you're able to share this or not, but I would not love, that sounds bad. But like, if there's been any like embarrassing or funny or interesting stories throughout your career that you would be open to sharing.
And I'll also say you do the birth and you also do postpartum visits. So you also check on them.
Oh my gosh.
So it's not done.
It doesn't end. It doesn't end with the birth.
So you do postpartum visits, you're checking in not only on like, maybe helping them to understand things that the baby needs, whatever, but also the family dynamic shifts. Couples sometimes love each other, don't love each other during that time, right? So you're like, it's a lot. Now, as far as like funny stories that have happened, I'm not saying that is anything that's in my, because everything to me is so normal at this point.
Yeah.
But like, there's a lot of poop during birth. There's a
You're like, I'm pretty used to the poop now.
Yeah, there's a lot of poop, and there's also a bit of vomit. Quite a bit of vomit. So I've definitely been like, vomited on. I've definitely like wiped poop because that's what my clients needed. They want nobody else to do it. I've definitely like
they're like, I'm pooping, can you wipe my butt?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, because some of it is not even like they're pooping, it's literally a baby pushing against your rectum. You're not pooping like because you feel like you're pooping because the baby's head is like, I'm gonna come out regardless.
Yeah. Right.
So there's that. And then there's also like the partners who are like beside themselves, like they're nauseous, they're like they don't know what's
You're
going
like talking
on.
them down.
Yeah, like talking them down, making sure that they're okay. Right. Like I remember my one client, I love her to death. We're still close, but during her pregnancy, her birthing process, she was cursing everybody out. She was cursing the baby out. She was cursing everybody else. Like literally her mom and her husband just like sat down. And I was the one with her. I was like holding her while she was cursing. I'm like,
yeah.
Okay.
Fuck everybody.
Yes. Fuck everybody, fuck this baby. Like fuck all of this shit. Like so I've definitely had some times where my clients or my one client yelling at me, like when she finally decided that she wanted to get an epidural, which I was like, cool, like makes sense to me, let's do it. And the anesthesiologist, usually it's only one, maybe two on the floor, depending on where you are. So even though you may want an epidural because you're like, I'm at a 10 and my pain is like astronomical, you may still have to wait 30 minutes. Like,
oh, no.
And so I remember my like client yelling at me like, Sabia, go get him. And I'm like, there's nothing that I can do. This man has a needle on somebody else's back. Like, I can't do anything about this.
You're back there like, where do I get this needle? I'll just shove it up you myself.
Like if I could, I would, but I can't. So it's been just a lot of like very memorable moments where like, of course, we laugh about it later. But things get intense, like in labor, you can't hide it. You can't be nice.
Yeah. If you could estimate, how many births have you been at?
So someone asked me this the other day, and I was like, okay, so I was a doula I still am a doula, but like I said, I focus on death now. Actively doulaing for like 3 or 4 years with a mix of between an average 2 to 3 births per month, high months being like 5 or 6 births.
Wow.
And so I don't know what that equals.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, quite a bit. At least 100, right?
Yeah, I don't know what that equals. So
yeah.
And I also like worked with, I've just been blessed to work with, like I said, incarcerated folks, formerly incarcerated folks. I've been blessed to work with surrogates and their process and supporting them and intended parents. I've been blessed to just work with so many different people. And I think the one thing, like, even if you go to so many births, you can go to 300, 500 births. And of course, there's some things that you kind of like expect, but every birth is its own.
Right.
Like,
it's all going to be a different experience.
Yeah, it's nothing that you can predict. Like I've been at births where it was a home birth and we're like, oh, you're 7 centimeters, you're on the toilet, you still have some time to go. She lays on a bed, does one push, the baby's like all the amniotic fluid is on me. The midwife is trying to catch the baby in the air. Like it's
things slipping and sliding.
Slipping and sliding, like, and we're just like, what? Like, so every birth is just its own experience.
Wow. Okay, I have to ask you about the death doula stuff since that's what you're focused on. Like, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a death doula?
Yes. So death doula work is like, it's so weird when you talk about death doula work with other like death workers, it makes sense when you're like, let me get excited about death. It can sound kind of weird to everyone else. But so for me, like I said, I heavily focus on birth the first like half of my doula career. And and have always done full spectrum work in the sense of like supporting everyone. But some of that conversation that gets lost or topic that gets lost in this work is death, right? And like death is always around us. Even in the process of birth, unfortunately, like people, have lost in that process. But it's something that is not talked about and normalized in our society, especially American, Western society. We don't talk about death enough. And so when it comes to us, we're like flabbergasted, we're like, but it's like death is as frequent as birth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But our like knowledge of it, or at least the desire to talk about it, is so missed. So in death work, it can really vary. I did my training with Going with Grace, which is a really good training, but death work can really vary. So some people kind of fall into death work as in doing helping people to do like advanced directives and doing wills and setting themselves up even before they're like sick, like just getting all that stuff together, understanding that we're all going to die. Just like we're all born, we're all going to die. So like, let's
getting
get it
ready
together.
for death.
Yeah, so that our families aren't in like complete
disarray.
Chaos when we pass away. So it can look like that. It can also look like literally being at the bedside of someone who's in the process of dying, right? It can look like supporting someone, a parent who's lost their child, right? It can look like when someone is pregnant and they find out that the quality of life that their child has is not going to be viable, right? So it can look like that. My current focus has really been, I do a lot of grief work, and I've been doing this work just like as a person. Like it's always been people just come to me like, oh, this person died. And I'm like, okay.
You want to talk about it?
Let's talk about it. Let's do this, right? But more specifically right now, like I've been supporting a friend of mine that is going through the medical assistance and dying process. And so for people that don't know what that is, it's basically a process that is currently legal, I think, in about 9 states in the US, something around that. It's legal in Canada as well and other places around the world. But basically, if someone has a quality of life that's going to continue to diminish because of their health issues, or if someone is terminally ill and knowing they're going to die in a short period of time, but want to kind of take charge of the experience, you can go through this medical process, and then basically you have a very specific cocktail that helps you to push you to sleep and keeps you asleep. So
keeps you asleep.
It keeps you asleep.
Good way to put it.
Keeps you asleep. So I'm currently supporting my friend in that process. And that is the work that I feel led to continue to do, is medical assistance in dying, as well as grief work. So yeah, it's just like another aspect of the full spectrum of
Is it again, if this is like too prying, just tell me, but is the friend that you're speaking of, she's going through that process herself, or it's like a family
she's going
member?
through the process herself.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
wow.
I definitely I have on my Substack. So I have a Substack called birthmuleterrace.com or something like that. Like sometimes I'm like, what is my own stuff? But on there is actually a conversation with her.
Yeah,
there's a conversation with her, a podcast that we did together, where we talk about her life and we talk about her process of choosing this path. And we get into like her perspective of why she's doing it and all those things. And I think, we as a society have to get more comfortable with talking about the transitions of life, because they're inevitable.
And I feel like it's, especially until you go through it too. And I feel like I'm very, very fortunate to where I haven't had a lot of death around me. But recently I went through something with my boyfriend and a family member. And I mean, we were there from, beginning of, we knew it was going to happen all the way through. And it was a while. And we're going through the trust and we're doing all the things. And we're like the person that he's calling, right? And like we're seeing it firsthand. And it really does open you up to understand these conversations need to happen. And just recently, my boyfriend and I met with a lawyer and started doing our trust and creating things, because you just never know. And it doesn't,
you just never know.
Yeah. It doesn't freak me out or anything. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to die. It's like, well, just depends on how I go out. Right. But it's like, it's going to happen. So yeah,
and I think it's also about the legacy that you want to leave. And also I think part of that legacy is obviously what you do and your living life, right? But also it's what you do in your death. Like for me, when I die, I want it to be easeful for the people that are, loving me and celebrating me and missing me. Like I don't want them to like have to go through all my stuff and go
Right.
through
Make
all
it
my
easy on
shit.
them.
And like
Yeah.
then they gotta
Yeah.
clear all my shit. Like I don't want them to do that. I want them to be like, damn, this is sad. Yes. Um, but also we have time and space to actually like be in this grief process and we're not like, like it's not like
Right.
this big
Right.
task that I think sometimes in some cases, whether people speak it up about it or not, when you have to do all of that after someone dies, it builds resentment. Like, dang, I just want to
Yeah.
be sad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm curious how do you handle working with such heavy shit? Like, do
Ooh,
you,
child.
yeah, like, I mean, it is what it is, right? Like, you can obviously be the person that you are, and you're like, I know I'm able to absorb this and handle this, and I have like tools to be able to. But yeah, what would you say? I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of things that you do, but what is
Yeah.
like something you can share, maybe with other people that might be going through some heavy shit that's helped
Yeah,
you?
for sure, for sure. For me, honestly, it's been such a path because I think handling like I'm the person who wants to sit with people during their transitions. Like, and I mean that's death, that's life, that's birth, that's learning, like that's like my place, right? Like that's where I feel that I'm most helpful to my community. And also I am a person who loves to build and grow and build things, right? And that comes with its own weight as well. And I also would say too, being who I am and being like the first person of like when we're talking about money, that also money comes with its own thing too, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Especially when you come from it, right? So, and there's a lot of unlearning that comes with that, a lot of grief that comes with that too. Um, but I would say in the last couple of years, very intentionally, I've been very specific about my practices around my liberation for myself. And that has included giving myself space and time to even process what I feel, giving myself resources. So, I go to therapy. I also
Yeah.
have a mentor, Michelle Phillips, who I talk to often. Like we have our sessions. I allow myself to be in spaces where people will care for me. I look and seek out those places, right? I've like
That's
aimed
huge.
to,
Mm-hmm.
stop putting myself in a position where like I'm the doer, I'm the this, I'm
Yeah.
the that. You know what I mean? It's like, and I think some of that is an ego stroke. So really like being aware of like where am I leaning into my ego in the worst place?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's nice to get that instant gratification of like you did this and you did
Right.
that. You're so helpful and you're so strong and you're so this, right? But in the long term, that doesn't ever end up feeling nice. So,
Mm-mm. Yeah.
so I've been very intentional about who I'm in community with, who I'm in relationship with, um, and making sure that I have a soft place to land. In ways that in prior years I would not seek out. Even in my romantic partnerships, I would date people who needed me to give all the time.
Right. Yep.
Now I ain't
Yep.
with that shit. I'd be like,
What are you gonna give to me?
yeah, what you gonna give to me? Like I don't,
Yeah. It's just
right?
back and
So
forth. Yeah.
it's just been a space for me of like, in order for me to do the work that I do and love to do, and don't see myself doing anything else in a sense of like this overall mission, um, to surround myself with the people and the resources that support my journey.
Yeah.
And that's everything from like my chiropractor to
Mm-hmm.
to getting a massage to even my work schedule is like 3 weeks on doing like public facing stuff and 2 weeks off where I'm not doing public facing things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And back and
Smart.
forth
Yeah.
because I need my wellness has to be at the center of everything or nothing else is really going to function.
Yeah. Makes
So
perfect sense. I
especially
started
when you have a
doing like,
team, you
yeah, I
have
started,
teams and people behind you. You got to like get yourself
yeah.
together.
Totally. I resonate with the like 3 weeks on, 2 weeks off because I started doing that with my work day, like week. So I have
Hmm.
like Mondays and Wednesdays are the only times that I'm doing like facing calls. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays are more like my admin days where I don't have to be on all the time. And it's like my
Hmm.
entire persona and personality is to be on. And I mean, as a Sagittarius and as just like my personality, I tend to be like that person. That is who I am. But there's definitely times where like my therapist asked me, she's like, what do you need from me? I'm like, honestly, I just like need someone to just listen to me for a change. Like I just want to be able to kind of unload on you. And I'm like, if you want to give me advice, great. If you don't, great. Just, and she's like, okay, that's what we'll do. And I'm like, I think I
Yes.
just need that. I think that's
The
healthy,
unloading part is so
Yeah.
important. Like having
Yeah.
those people in your life where you're like, I just need you to call, like I need to call you and I just need you to listen. And maybe some of this doesn't even make sense to you and that's fine. But like, I just need you to listen and I need you to like send carrot cake to my house. Like,
Yeah, carrot cake is my favorite.
it's my favorite.
Wow. The
I,
frosting, I feel like I'm such a weirdo when I tell people I love carrot cake. Like my
no, I love
parents,
carrot cake.
that my birthday
Like,
cake was carrot cake as a kid because I loved it so much.
carrot cake is a gem.
Yeah.
Like, if you want me, I'm going through some hardships, send me some carrot cake.
Now I know
It's
what
really
to send
not
you.
that difficult.
It's not that difficult. That's all we need. That's all we need. That is so
That's
funny.
all
Okay.
we need. And we also need for you to shut up. Just don't talk. Like if we're gonna be in the same space and you don't want me to isolate myself, I need you to be quiet
Shut up and
and
send carrot
just
cake. Can we make
shut up
that a
and take
shirt?
care of it. Shut up and like rub my back. Like don't
Yeah.
all this other stuff you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think that's also been a part of it is like being in spaces where I'm like, I don't want to have to be on. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
the same way. Like Tuesdays and Wednesdays are my social days. We're getting me on an off day here, okay? But
Yep.
Wednesdays are my social days. And then Mondays and Thursdays are more like admin, internal, if I have to meet with team members. And then the rest of the time, I really don't want to talk to y'all. And it's no
Right.
shade. It's not me being no kind of way, but in order for me to be balanced, I have to spend a lot of time with myself and my
Oh.
dogs.
Oh God, I saw your dog earlier when you were I was like, I'm in love with you.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's my one dog. My other dog is also here.
Or chilling
That's
on the
Cairo.
couch. Oh,
Yeah.
cutie. I
Cairo is
love it.
my 5-year-old. And Cash is my
Oh,
1-year-old.
I love it. The 1 year old's probably like crazy, right?
Yeah, he's a golden doodle, so he's a mini golden doodle. So he's just happy all the time.
Oh,
But it's also like refreshing, right? Because I do all this like serious stuff. My thoughts are like, well, how do I save the world? And
right.
my dogs are like, we do not give a fuck. Like, girl, if
Yeah,
you'll get here and give us some food and throw this ball around,
totally.
like,
I
oh, okay.
so sometimes when I go on vacation or like when I am staying somewhere else without my dogs, I walk into the house and I'm so sad because I'm like, I don't get that like feeling of just like they just unconditionally want to jump in love and like be on. And it doesn't matter like what you did that day or what happened, right? I'm just like, oh my
Yes.
gosh, like I
My
love
book
this
came
every day.
out. My book came out and it was like a great day. Like it was a wonderful day, right? Like my mom had this whole thing for me. My family was there, friends were there. It was cute. And then like I get home to my dogs and we're like chilling and they're just like fighting on top of me. And like they just don't care
Don't
about
care.
anything.
Yeah.
Like they're like, girl, book, whatever. Like we jumping on top of you. Like we
I'm
don't care
gonna
about
eat your
this.
book. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like,
That's funny.
okay. But I think there's something about like that. And it's the same thing like with my kids too. It's like, they're like, TT, like, don't care. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. They
so
don't
I think
care.
it's something about being in spaces where people recognize the work that you do, but I think it can also be healing for them to just treat you as you and
Right.
not what you do.
Yeah. I have one final question for you.
Mhm.
You are a lot of things, but specifically as a doula, what is one thing that you wish people knew more about this profession?
Hmm.
It's a tough one.
I wish that they knew how helpful a doula really can be. I think sometimes, like, I've had clients, I remember this one client that now it's 2 babies later. But when I first met her, she was like, my husband thinks that you're here to like take his space, right? Or he doesn't understand like what you do, or like so once we like had a conversation and I explained like, the medical benefits as far as like decreased C-section and increased lactation and, help, decrease in postpartum mood disorders and like all these kind of things. And then also talk about like, hey, I'm also here to support you, right? So that you can be present in the experience as the father, right? So
Right.
you don't have to think about all these different pieces and you know that I too am here to support you. So I wish that people really understood the value of it and also would understand that we're there to be present during any experience, right? Whether it's
Mm-hmm.
hospital, whether you have a planned C-section, whether you are having a water birth at home, whether you're having a birth on top of the tree, like it doesn't matter.
Yeah, we'll be there.
It will be there. So I think that was like that's the thing that I want people to understand, and I think that will help them to understand the value of the work if they
It
really
does.
understood what we
Mm-hmm.
do.
Right.
We're not just there to be accessories. We're there to actually do some things.
Yeah, no, I've already learned so much. And I did say that was the last question, but I do have one more because it's like it's a personal thing, but flipping the script here, like coming from the side of someone that would be giving birth potentially, or is in a family that someone is giving birth. Would you recommend, because this is just my thought process, would you recommend that person interviews multiple doulas before picking one? And is that normal? Sure. And is that like me being a people pleaser? I'm assuming like, oh my gosh, what if I interview her? And then I'm like, no, never mind, I'm gonna go with someone else. Like that sounds rude. But yeah, is that a normal process?
So I would definitely suggest that. So like, especially when I was like heavily doing the birth side of things, I would have a client and I would even suggest people for them to interview, right? Because I think the interview process for doulas is like, yes, I'm being interviewed as a doula, but I'm also interviewing you. We have to understand that we're a good match. Right. And I love my clients to see that my approach to doula work is different than the way that somebody may approach it. Like I'm definitely like how I talk to you right now is how I talk to my clients. Right. But if you want somebody to be softer with you, right, then you might want if you want someone, yeah, look, if you want someone who doesn't curse, like I'm probably not the person for you. Or if you're looking for someone to have a specific approach, or maybe even speak your language, or have a cultural understanding of who you are, or maybe have a similar religious belief, or whatever it is, I think that it's important for you to have those conversations. And the expectation from the doula should be that we're interviewing and I'm going to let you know if this works for me in this certain period of time.
Yeah, if you think
that should be the expectation. Yeah, so it's not like a one. And I think I've definitely had clients where they meet me and they're like, "You're the one." Like I know it. That's just what it is, and that's fine too. But I do promote folks to interview, and also understand, and also don't be offended if a doula says to you, like, I appreciate the offer of you wanting to work with me, but I don't think that we're a good fit.
You're freaking crazy. Just kidding. I could feel like someone would be like, you're going to be a lot for me. I don't think I can deal with what's coming out of your vagina.
I know you like me, but I don't think that we're going to be a good thing. And that's not like, it's not to be offensive, but it's to be like, I'm going to be so close and intimate and like, in your business and in your home and at your birth, and like if we're not vibing 100%, we probably shouldn't move forward with this.
No, that's so important. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Down and Dirty podcast. We got down, we got dirty. Can you tell everyone where they can find you? Again, please talk about your book and anything else that I feel like there's just so many things, but like, give the people what they want.
Yes, book stuff. You can look up Birth and Liberation anywhere. You can buy it anywhere. I do not have a preference on where you buy it. It's also available in audio for folks who love that option. And then as far as keeping up with me, the best thing to do is either follow my Instagram, which is Sabia Wade, or just go to my website and you can sign up for my newsletter and you'll just see me in your inbox on a regular basis. But yeah, and I love for folks to reach out and like hit me up and comment on things and all that. I try to do my best to actually be responsive in that way. Because sometimes, as you know, when you're doing this work, you're like, even though I'm introverted, sometimes you need people to tell you like, it's okay. When you're having those hard days, you're like, okay, this is why I do it.
Yeah, definitely.
This is why I do it. So I love hearing from other people. And yeah, feel free to connect to me anywhere.
Amazing. Well, I just want to say thank you for everything that you're doing, because you are 100% making such an impact in multiple people's lives, but also just like in general, I can tell like what a great person that you are, and like everything that you do is like really from your core. So I just want to say thank you so much. And I feel like I got the pleasure to meet you and talk with you. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Sagittarius gang and
let's go. Carrot cake gang. Carrot cake gang. All right. We're going to say bye, but you can stay on to actually say bye. Bye.
Thanks for listening to that Onomy podcast. Onomy is a creator-led educational platform that teaches you the things you wished you learned in school so you can thrive in adulthood. Onomy lessons are completely free and they're taught by some of your favorite creators from around the internet. Head to onomy.co to start learning about things like budgeting, investing, taxes, how to thrive in your relationships, how to find your dream job, and so much more. That's onomy.co, onomy.co. See you there.